So coming off of the end of the previous chapter, we saw that Kenjaku was able to make like these mini Uzumakis somehow, and he used one of them to blast a hole through Tsukumo's stomach. And that was like the cliffhanger of that chapter. We thought like, oh, is Tsukumo gonna make it through this? And coming into the beginning of this chapter, we see that yes, she definitely did take that damage. And we're sent into like this flashback, I guess, or I don't know, like a thing that possibly only happening in Choso's mind. I'm not really sure. This is like up for you to interpret, I suppose, but we see Choso and Tsukumo like at this bar all dressed up talking, and Tengen is the bartender. Now another possibility for this is that Tengen is making this happen, because it was revealed like 2 chapters ago or something, like where they are in the Star Corridor. If you're really good with barriers the way that Kenjaku and Tengen are, you can manipulate the barriers pretty easily. Like that's how Kenjaku was able to make like that movie theater to explain his plan to Choso. So it's possible that Tengen is doing the same thing here, and he made like this bar for them to chill at. But they're basically talking about like Choso and how he's protecting Yuji, and that Choso chose to live as a curse because his brothers didn't really have that luxury. Like Choso looks pretty much like a full-blown human, aside from like the marks on his face. But Eso and Kechisu didn't really get that privilege. I mean, Eso kind of did. Aside from his eyes, he looks like a full-blown human, but Kechisu looks like a full-blown curse. And he feels responsible for their deaths because he chose to live as a curse and basically made them live as a curse as well. Because he figures that like if they weren't living as curses, then it wouldn't have gotten to the point of where Nobara and Yuji killed them. So he feels responsible for that, thinking that, you know, being a curse was the easy path. That he didn't want to see them suffer as humans, but he now realizes that they weren't that weak. And it was basically fate for him and Yuji to eventually fight together. But he realizes that he left Yuji all alone because of the easy path that he was taking living as a curse. And Tsukumo says, you know, like if you die now, he'll be all alone again. And Choso says, well, it's no use. I killed humans for no good reason, so I can no longer live alongside him. And this is the way for me to use my life. And then he activates like this blood destructo disc and goes after Tengen with it. But yeah, Choso is essentially planning on sacrificing himself, not only just to take down Kenjaku, but also to help Yuji in the process, you know, because he feels that this is the only thing that he can really do at this point. He feels that he's past the point of no return because of the way that he lived his life previously, especially killing all those people in Shibuya. But Tsukumo's like, nah, I'm the one who's going to be sacrificing myself in this chapter, because she's like, you know, this is where you die as a curse, so you must live on as a human. And Tengen like helps her out and sends Choso through the barrier, you know, protecting him from what's about to happen. But then right after, Kenjaku like swats Tsukumo with his gravity curse technique and splits her in half, and that's seemingly the end of her, until Tengen appears, and Kenjaku like starts laughing at him. He's like, just look at you. Is this what you wanted? You look like... And then we see Sukuna's face. That's interesting, right? I think this is the best like full-on shot that we've seen of Sukuna's face, like portrait style so far. And yeah, we've been speculating about this for a while now, that Sukuna does look similar to Tengen, meaning that they're probably in a similar boat. Like, we know that Tengen looks this way because of his immortality curse technique. Like, after a certain amount of time, Tengen has to switch to another body, like the Star Plasma Vessel. Because if he doesn't, then he's going to evolve. And this evolution essentially becomes like a cursed spirit more than anything. And he begins to take on this look, but also he kind of becomes like an abstraction at the same time, like almost like sentient atmosphere almost, or something like that. And continuing to go into that evolution, he can in theory become a threat to humanity. Now at this point, pretty sure Sukuna doesn't have the immortality curse technique. I mean, we really hardly know much about him, but I'm assuming that him looking like Tengen-esque is the result of something else, although it could be an analog to what Tengen is doing. Because, you know, we know that Sukuna started off as a human, so he eventually got to this point over time. But, you know, it's just showing us there's still a lot of secrets and mystery to Sukuna that will, you know, probably be revealed sometime next year. But Tengen showing up was actually to distract Kenjaku, because this gave enough time for Tsukumo, who's still alive, to grab Kenjaku's ankle, and then she seemingly activates her maximum technique here. I mean, it's not outright said that it is, but I'm assuming that it must be that, unless it's just her kamikaze attack, because that's basically what she's doing here. She's using her Star Rage curse technique, that she literally becomes a black hole. That's what she's doing here. Like, we saw originally that her Star Rage curse technique, you know, alters her mass, makes her more dense, but apparently she can just keep adding more and more mass to her. And once you get to a certain point, you basically create a black hole, and that's what she's doing here. But, you know, also at the cost of her own life. But she was already going to die anyway. So, like I said, she's just sacrificing herself for the greater good. And she's doing this black hole like point blank to Kenjaku here. And it's crazy, as we would expect, like drawing in everything around it, even pulling in the ceiling. And once the smoke clears, Kenjaku somehow survived this. And Tengen asks him, like, you know, how did you do it? And Kenjaku goes on to explain that it wasn't curse technique reversal, because the gravity until now was curse technique reversal. Because the curse technique anti-gravity system was engraved in Kaori, and through lapse, he was able to avoid restrictions on unstable output and activation time by using his own body as a domain. Okay, so a lot to break down here. So first of all, I guess the gravity technique that he's been using has been called anti-gravity system, and that it was Kaori's curse technique. So if you saw my spoilers video for this chapter, forgive me, I totally forgot who Kaori was. Her name is literally only said once in the series. I think it's in chapter 143 when she is revealed to be Yuji's mom, or at least that Kenjaku was in her body when she gave birth to Yuji. But yeah, Yuji's mom's name is Kaori, or the vessel of her was. And it turns out that she has the anti-gravity system curse technique that Kenjaku has seemingly been using up. So understandable that Kenjaku would go inside of a sorcerer's body in order to have Yuji. Kind of kills two birds with one stone, I guess. Giving birth to Sukuna's vessel. Then also you get to take her cool curse technique, which I guess also means that womb profusion, you know, the domain that we saw Kenjaku use, is like the domain of his brain hopping ability, I guess. Still not confirmed, I'm just speculating, but maybe once he activates that domain, then he's able to use any curse technique he wants from his former hosts, because I guess that's how it works. He takes the curse technique of the bodies that he's inhabited. And what he did to survive the black hole using this was lapse. And I'm assuming this is the same lapse that Gojo uses. Like, we saw that when he does technique blue, it's like curse technique lapse, meaning that he's like reinforcing his base curse technique with regular or negative cursed energy, and the amplified version gives off like a different effect. Like Limitless getting amplified, or the lapse of it creates blue, like the vacuum aspect. But Kenjaku was using lapse on anti-gravity system, and I guess that made it strong enough for him to survive a point blank black hole. Then he also says that he used his own body as a domain. So instead of like creating like the spherical barrier, or what Kenjaku did a couple chapters back, where just spreading out the domain without closing it, he used his own body as the domain. Like, his body became the barrier, I suppose. So this also allowed him to survive the black hole, but also stop it at the same time, I suppose, because he says, like, it could have blown up the whole world, but your barrier, Tengen, and Tsukumo's will suppressed it. So yeah, crazy stuff here. I mean, I guess we suspected that a friggin' black hole set off on Earth would eventually destroy it, if not dealt with, right? But then after this, Tengen seems to like dissipate, and then Kenjaku is like looking down at what appears to be like the true Tengen, I guess, and like laying down in a tree. And this makes sense because Tengen said, like, when he first met Yuji in the group, that they weren't like talking to like his tangible form, because since he's like evolved so much, he's become more of like an abstraction or something. But I guess this is his tangible form that was left behind, or I guess this means that this is where Kenjaku is about to like absorb him with cursed spirit manipulation, and then go into his plan where he's going to fuse all of the people in Japan with Tengen and making them into that giant Uzumaki monster. Another interesting thing is that he calls Tengen his friend, which we talked about before, but it seems like they do have like a serious history. I mean, Tengen knew everything about Kenjaku. Like, he was the one that explained that to the audience and the main characters, you know, first and foremost. So yes, something definitely happened back in the Heian era, or even before that possibly, that led to the climate of where the world is at today, especially in the inner circle of like the super powerful jujutsu people. But yeah, let me know what you thought about this chapter in the comments, guys. And if you liked the video, please give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.